She called me cheap. It wasn't the first time, not even the 10th, but this time it was different. This time it hit me like a physical blow, right in the gut, leaving me breathless. My heart didn't just sink, it shattered into a million tiny invisible pieces. 'Cause the brand she was talking about, the one she scoffed at, the one I didn't buy, it was mine. Not mine like I bought a share, but mine like I built it, piece by agonizing piece, from nothing. It was the patent I held, the idea I sweated blood for, the dream I sold to save a life. Her name was Sarah. She was new to the office, a whirlwind of designer bags and brand-name coffee cups, always meticulously dressed, always with an opinion. Today, the target of her disdain was my lunch container. It was a simple thing, really. A sturdy, reusable food storage box. Nothing fancy, just practical. But it wasn't the brand she approved of. "Seriously, Alex," she'd said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy, loud enough for half the break room to hear. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at my sandwich. "That generic thing. Don't you know? They leach chemicals, and the lids never seal properly. You should really invest in some EverFresh. They're a little pricey, but they last forever, and your food actually stays fresh. You know, like they promise." A few chuckles rippled through the room. Mark, who sat next to me, gave a sympathetic shrug. Sarah smiled, a triumphant glint in her eyes as if she'd just delivered a profound life lesson. She picked up her own sleek, clear container, the EverFresh logo, prominently displayed. She probably thought she was being helpful, or funny, or maybe just superior. But all I could hear was the echo of cheap. The sandwich in my hand suddenly felt heavy, tasteless. My throat tightened, making it hard to swallow. I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her until she understood the irony, the pain, the absolute absurdity of her words. But I couldn't. The words just wouldn't come. My secret, the one I'd guarded for years, felt like a lead weight in my chest, pinning me down. I just stared at her, probably looking like a deer caught in headlights. She misread my silence as agreement, or perhaps shame. "See?" she chirped, oblivious. "It's worth it. Quality over quantity, right?" I managed a weak nod, forcing a fake smile that probably looked more like a grimace. I pushed my container away, my appetite completely gone. Plastic, the very plastic she held in her hand, felt like a burning ember, scalding my soul. EverFresh. My EverFresh. The name I'd agonized over, the design I'd perfected, the patent that sat in a dusty box in my attic. She went on, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "I mean, it's just a few extra bucks. It's not like you're going to go broke buying a decent food container." Her gaze swept over my worn but clean jeans, my plain t-shirt, my slightly scuffed shoes. I knew what she saw, a guy who looked like he barely scraped by, a guy who needed to be told how to spend his money wisely, a guy who was, well, cheap. If only she knew, if only they all knew. Truth was, I could buy the entire company that produced EverFresh if I wanted to. I could buy a dozen of them, but I didn't. I lived simply. I drove an old car. I wore clothes from discount stores. I ate sandwiches from generic containers. And every single choice was deliberate, a promise, a burden, a ghost that haunted me. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it, bitter and metallic. She was flaunting my legacy, mocking my choices, all while completely ignorant of the fact that the very item she held up as a symbol of superior quality, of wealth, of smart spending, was the very product of my desperation, my genius, and my heartbreaking sacrifice. I excused myself from the break room, muttering something about needing to check on a report. My hands were shaking. I needed to get away, to breathe, to stop the tears that threatened to spill. The hallway felt like a tunnel closing in on me. I locked myself in the nearest bathroom stall, leaning against the cold metal, my head against the wall. "Cheap," she'd said. The word echoed, louder than any scream. And suddenly, it wasn't just Sarah's voice I heard. It was my father's, from years ago, telling me we couldn't afford new shoes. It was the doctors explaining the cost of Lily's treatment. It was the voice of every person who had ever made me feel small, worthless, like I wasn't enough. But I was enough, more than enough. I was the person who designed EverFresh. I was the person who innovated its unique seal, its durable material, its modular system. I was the person who held the patent, the legal document that tied my name, Alex Miller, to the very foundation of that multi-billion-dollar brand. And she had no idea at all. And a part of me, a deep wounded part, wished she did. The word cheap had always been a thorn in my side, a label slapped on me from birth. We grew up poor, not starving, but close enough to it that every penny counted. My dad worked 2 jobs. My mom picked up shifts cleaning houses, but it was never quite enough. Our house was small, our clothes were hand-me-downs, and brand names were something we only saw in magazines or on television commercials, glittering like alien artifacts from a distant, unattainable world. My little sister Lily was my whole world. She was sunshine and laughter, even when life was bleak. We shared a cramped room, dreams whispered in the dark, and the secret pact that one day we'd make it big. I swore I'd give her everything she ever wanted. I swore she'd never know what it felt like to be called cheap. Even as a kid, I was always tinkering. I didn't have fancy toys, so I made my own. Broken appliances, discarded electronics, old plastic containers. They were my treasures. I'd spend hours in our rickety garage, surrounded by tools borrowed from Dad, trying to fix things, to improve them, to understand how they worked. My parents would joke I had an inventor's spirit, but it was more than that. It was an obsession. I wanted to create something useful, something that made life easier, something that lasted, something that wasn't cheap. The idea for EverFresh started small, as most things do. It was born out of frustration. Our refrigerator was always a mess. Leftovers would spoil quickly in flimsy plastic bags or warped, hand-me-down containers that leaked and smelled. My mum would sigh, throwing away good food, shaking her head at the waste. One evening, after a particularly pungent incident involving a leaky lasagna container, I decided enough was enough. I drew crude sketches in a worn notebook, diagrams of lids that actually sealed, bases that stacked perfectly, materials that could withstand anything from a freezer to a microwave. I wasn't thinking about patents or billions back then. I was thinking about my mom's weary face, about Lily's favorite snacks going stale. I was thinking about durability, efficiency, and freshness. I devoured books on material science, plastics, design, and engineering. Our local library became my second home. The librarians knew me by name, always pointing me towards new resources. I taught myself CAD software, using old, slow computers at school, staying late, sometimes until the janitors kicked me out. My friends were out playing sports or going to parties, and I was hunched over a keyboard, designing prototypes that only existed on a screen. It was a lonely path. Most people didn't understand my passion. They saw a quiet kid, always drawing or reading, always busy with some project no one else could see. They saw someone who didn't fit in, someone a little bit different. But Lily understood. She'd bring me stale cookies from the kitchen, sit on an overturned bucket in the garage and watch me work, her small presence a silent encouragement. "You are going to make something amazing, Alex," she'd say, her voice full of unwavering faith. I remember the day I had my first physical prototype. It wasn't pretty. I'd salvaged plastic from old milk jugs, melted them down in a makeshift furnace in the backyard, much to my dad's horror, and molded a rough, square container. The lid was a clumsy affair, but when I snapped it shut, there was a satisfying thump. I filled it with water, held it upside down, and for a glorious 30 seconds, not a single drop escaped. It leaked eventually, of course. Many prototypes did. Hundreds of them. The smell of melted plastic became a familiar scent, clinging to my clothes, my hair. My hands were often stained, nicked, or burned. But with each failure I learned, I refined, I got closer. The frustration was immense, but the vision of fresh food, of no more waste, of a solution for my family kept me going. This wasn't just about a container. It was about proving to myself and to the world that I wasn't just a poor kid with no options. It was about creating something of value, something that would make a difference, even if it was just in the mundane daily life of a kitchen. It was about proving I wasn't cheap. I was an innovator. And I was going to change things one perfect seal at a time. The road ahead was long, fraught with challenges I couldn't yet imagine. But the dream was taking shape, solidifying with every failed experiment and every tiny victory. The journey from a leaky plastic prototype in my backyard to a fully realized patent-pending design was long, arduous, and often heartbreaking. After that first clumsy container, I realized I needed more than just salvaged plastic. I needed proper materials, precise molding, and a real understanding of polymer science. My savings from my after-school job, mowing lawns, washing cars, anything to earn a few bucks, went entirely into buying small quantities of specialized resins, silicone for seals, and tools I couldn't borrow from my dad. I worked relentlessly. During high school, while my friends worried about prom dates and college applications, I was holed up in the garage, fueled by cheap instant coffee and a burning desire to make my idea real. I started winning small science fairs, which gave me a little recognition, a small boost of confidence, and, crucially, access to school equipment like 3D printers after hours. These resources, limited as they were, felt like a lifeline. The patent process was a beast. I remember poring over dense legal documents, trying to understand jargon that felt like a foreign language. Prior art, claims, specification, infringement. Each term was a hurdle. I couldn't afford a fancy patent lawyer. I tried to do it myself, using every free resource I could find online and at the library. It was terrifying, overwhelming. I drafted and redrafted my application dozens of times, trying to perfectly describe the unique interlocking lid design, the revolutionary ventilation system, the food-grade, durable, eco-friendly material composition. There were so many moments I wanted to give up. The rejections from potential investors were brutal. Too niche, too expensive to manufacture, already too much competition. Each polite, dismissive email felt like a punch to the gut. My parents, bless their hearts, tried to be supportive, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They wanted me to go to college, get a safe job, not waste my youth chasing a pipe dream. "Alex," my dad would say gently, "you are working yourself to the bone for this. Are you sure it's worth it?" But then I'd look at Lily. She was growing up, still bright and full of life, but there was a fragility about her, a vulnerability that made my stomach clench. She had always been prone to getting sick, more so than other kids. We didn't know it then, but a silent, insidious illness was slowly taking root inside her. One late night after another failed prototype, and another stack of rejection letters, I was ready to throw in the towel. My hands were raw, My eyes burned from staring at screens and blueprints. I felt defeated, hollow. Lily found me in the garage, slumped over my workbench, surrounded by crumpled papers and discarded plastic. She was probably 10 years old then, her face pale in the dim light. She didn't say much. She just sat beside me, on the same overturned bucket she always used, and gently took my calloused hand. "Going to be okay, Alex," she whispered, her voice surprisingly firm for such a small girl. "You are so smart. You'll figure it out." Her unwavering belief was the only fuel I had left. Her hand in mine was the only thing that stopped me from walking away from it all. I pushed through. I took on even more odd jobs, saving every cent. I refined my design, making it cheaper to produce without sacrificing quality. I perfected the seal, making it truly airtight, truly leak-proof. The material I chose was unique, a bioplastic blend that was incredibly durable, stain-resistant, and could withstand extreme temperatures. It was revolutionary. Finally, after years of endless struggle, the breakthrough came. It wasn't a massive investment, but a small government grant for sustainable innovation. It was enough to fund the final patent application and create a small batch of professionally manufactured prototypes. When I received the official letter, the thick envelope with the US Patent and Trademark Office seal, I nearly collapsed. Patent number 8,765,432. My name, Alexander Miller, officially listed as the inventor of the EverFresh food storage system. It was real. I had done it. The feeling was a strange mix of euphoria and exhaustion. I held the document in my hands, a testament to years of sacrifice. I thought of all the sleepless nights, the social events I missed, the times I went without a proper meal just to buy another bag of resin. It was done. I had my patent. Now the real work began, bringing EverFresh to the world. I had no idea how quickly that dream would turn into a desperate, agonizing necessity. Getting the patent was one battle won, but the war for market entry was another beast entirely. I tried to launch my own small business. I borrowed money, used my grant, invested everything into a small production run of EverFresh containers. I packaged them myself, tried to sell them online at local farmers markets, even door to door. People loved the product. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. They recognized the quality, the ingenuity. But I couldn't scale. I didn't have the capital, the distribution network, or the marketing power to compete with the giants already dominating the kitchenware market. My savings dwindled. I was living on ramen and the sheer force of my will. The stress was immense. And then the true heartbreak began. Lily got sicker. Her cheerful demeanor started to fade, replaced by a constant weariness, persistent aches, and a worrying pallor. Doctor's appointments became more frequent, then hospital visits. We learned she had a rare, progressive autoimmune disease. It was treatable, they said. But the treatments were incredibly expensive, requiring specialized medication and therapies not covered by our basic insurance. The numbers they quoted were astronomical, more money than I could ever hope to earn in a lifetime, let alone quickly. My parents were distraught, helpless. They were already stretched thin. My invention, my patent, which I had hoped would be our ticket to a better life, suddenly became our only hope for survival. I knew what I had to do. It was the hardest decision of my life. I couldn't build a company fast enough. Lily didn't have that kind of time. Her health was deteriorating rapidly. I had to sell. Not just license, not just partner, but sell the patent outright. Sell my baby. Sell the very thing I had poured my entire life into. The thing that bore my name and my dreams, to a company that had the resources to mass produce it, distribute it globally, and most importantly, pay me enough to save Lily. I contacted every major kitchenware and household goods corporation I could find. Most ignored me. A few offered insultingly low sums. But then, a glimmer of hope. Zenith Innovations, a massive conglomerate known for acquiring smaller, innovative companies and brands, showed interest. They saw the potential. They saw the genius in the EverFresh design. The negotiations were brutal. They knew I was desperate. They played hardball. I fought for every penny, not for myself, but for Lily. I brought my prototypes, my technical drawings, my sales data from the farmer's market, my passion. I explained the unique properties, the environmental benefits, the longevity. I told them my story. Not the whole truth about Lily, but enough about my humble beginnings and my dedication to creating a truly superior product. Finally, after weeks of back and forth late-night calls and intense pressure, they made an offer. It was a staggering sum, more money than I could ever have imagined. Enough to cover Lily's past medical bills, her ongoing treatments, and a substantial fund for her future care. It was enough to save her life. The day I signed the papers was surreal. The corporate lawyers were slick, emotionless. They explained the clauses, the intellectual property transfer, the non-disclosure agreements. My name would no longer be publicly associated with the patent, though it would remain on the official government document. Zenith Innovations would take full ownership of the design, the branding, the manufacturing. EverFresh would become theirs, their brand, their product. My hand trembled as I signed. It felt like I was signing away a part of my soul. There was a brief, bittersweet sense of accomplishment. I had done it. I had created something truly valuable, valuable enough to save the person I loved most in the world. But beneath that, there was a profound emptiness, a feeling of loss so deep it ached. The money hit my account a few days later, a string of zeros that dwarfed anything I'd ever seen. It was a moment of immense relief, knowing Lily was safe. We started her on the expensive medication immediately. Her health slowly, gradually began to improve. Seeing her smile again, seeing her energy return, was worth every single shred of heartbreak I felt. It was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every single moment of pain. The world now saw EverFresh as Zenith Innovations' creation. My name, Alex Miller, the true inventor, was erased from the public narrative. I became a quiet millionaire, living a deliberately understated life, carrying a secret burden of immense wealth and immense sacrifice. Every time I saw an EverFresh container in a store, in a commercial, or now in Sarah's hands, it was a painful reminder of the dream I had built and then had to let go of, all for the love of my sister. Life after the Zenith Innovations deal was strained. I went from being a struggling inventor, constantly chasing a breakthrough, to someone with immense financial freedom, yet still living like I was broke. The first thing I did was pay off all of Lily's immediate medical bills. The relief was overwhelming. Then I set up a robust trust fund for her long-term care, ensuring she'd never have to worry about treatment costs again. Seeing her recover, gain strength, and start living like a normal kid again was the greatest reward. It validated every single sacrifice. But wealth, I quickly learned, didn't erase the past, didn't erase the memories of poverty, of being called cheap, of the anxiety of not knowing where the next meal would come from. In fact, it amplified them. I saw friends and family suddenly treat me differently, or subtly ask for favors, or just awkwardly avoid me altogether. The idea of living a lavish lifestyle, buying expensive cars or mansions, felt utterly alien and distasteful. It felt like a betrayal of who I was, where I came from, and more importantly, why I had sold EverFresh in the first place. I decided to live simply, deliberately. It wasn't about being frugal. It was about staying grounded. I bought a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, far from the glitz and glamour that could easily consume someone with my resources. I continued to drive my old, reliable sedan. My clothes remained simple, practical, and unbranded. I shopped at regular grocery stores, cooked my own meals, and opted for quality that lasted rather than status symbols. I took a job at a mid-sized marketing firm. It was a quiet, stable role in their data analysis department. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't about innovation. I didn't need the money, but I needed purpose. I needed to feel productive, to engage my mind, to connect with people on a normal level, not as the rich guy. It allowed me to blend in, to observe, to be just Alex Miller, a regular guy earning an honest living. No one at the office, not a single soul, had any idea about my past, about the patent, about the billions I had indirectly generated. The EverFresh brand exploded. It was everywhere. On television commercials, in every supermarket, in friends' home. It became the gold standard for food storage containers. Exactly what I had always envisioned. Seeing it was a constant, bittersweet reminder, a strange mix of pride and phantom limb pain. My creation, my baby, thriving in the world, making people's lives easier, just as I had hoped. But it was no longer mine, not really. It belonged to Zenith. And the irony was, I still used one of my very first unmarked prototypes for my own lunch, a silent rebellion against the brand I had given birth to. It was more durable, made with a slightly different early material, a personal treasure that only I recognized. This quiet, anonymous life suited me. It kept me sane. It allowed me to focus on Lily's recovery, to spend time with my family, to finally breathe without the crushing weight of financial fear. But it also meant living with a constant secret. A secret that occasionally felt like a burden. Particularly when someone, like Sarah, unwittingly pressed on that old familiar wound. The first time Sarah made a comment about my cheap coffee mug, a plain, sturdy ceramic one, I just shrugged it off. Then it was my shoes, my phone, my generic office supplies. Each comment was a tiny pinprick. I'd just smile and say, it works for me. I valued function over flash. I believed in lasting quality, not disposable trends. These were values instilled in me by my upbringing, reinforced by my inventing journey. I even tried to explain my philosophy to Sarah once. I prefer things that are durable and practical, I'd said, hoping she might understand. Sometimes the most expensive brand isn't actually the best value. She just laughed, a tinkling, dismissive sound. Oh, Alex, you are such a minimalist. I get it. But some things are just worth investing in, you know? Like your health, or your image. Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they completely missed the point. My health was fine, and my image to me was one of integrity, not superficial displays of wealth. And the investment she so readily discussed was something I had literally poured my blood, sweat, and tears into, only to give it away for a cause far more important than any status symbol. I would watch her, holding her EverFresh container, her face lit up with an almost evangelical fervor for the brand. And I'd think, if only she knew the years of struggle, the moments of despair, the sacrifice behind that logo she so casually championed. If only she knew that the cheap guy across from her was the very reason that quality brand existed. But I kept my silence. For now. It was getting harder though. Much harder. Sarah's brand obsession wasn't just limited to my lunch container. It permeated every aspect of her office life, and by extension, mine. She talked about designer clothes, luxury cars, exotic vacations, always contrasting them with what she deemed lesser alternatives. My simple choices became a constant, unwitting tug. "Alex, are you still using that beat-up old laptop?" she'd say, glancing at my company-issued machine, which was perfectly functional but lacked the sleek, metallic sheen of her personal one. "You know, investing in good tech makes you more productive. Think of it as an asset." Another time, she saw me pulling out a generic pen. "Oh, honey," she'd coo, "you deserve a proper writing instrument. These cheap pens always skip. You need a Mont Blanc. They write like a dream." She produced one from her purse, gleaming and impressive. I just smiled, holding up my reliable pen. This one's always worked for me. I didn't mention I preferred the feel of a simple ballpoint, or that the idea of spending hundreds on a pen felt absurd when I knew what real hardship was. The comments, though seemingly innocuous, chipped away at me. They weren't direct attacks, but they were constant, subtle judgments about my perceived lack of ambition, my apparent inability to appreciate the finer things. Other co-workers, sensing the social dynamic, sometimes chimed in. "Yeah, Alex, you should splurge a little," Mark would say, trying to lighten the mood, but still adding to the pressure. "You work hard." It felt like 1,000 tiny needles, pricking at the raw wound of my past. Each mention of a brand name, each subtle dig at my frugality, brought back the ghost of Lily's illness, the desperation of selling my patent, the years of struggle. I lived modestly because I chose to, because I valued stability, and because I remembered what it was like to truly need. But they saw it as a deficiency, a sign of being less than. I tried to explain myself gently, hoping to impart some perspective. "I just don't see the point in paying for a name when the quality is the same," I'd offered once, when the topic turned to expensive athletic shoes. Or sometimes the cheaper option is actually made better, because they're focused on function, not marketing. Sarah just shook her head, her perfectly styled hair swaying. "Oh, Alex, you are such an idealist. It's not just about the quality, it's about the experience, the status, the craftsmanship. It's about treating yourself." She genuinely believed she was enlightened, that her consumerism was a form of self-care. It was like speaking two different languages. I started to feel isolated. I kept to myself more, eating my lunch at my desk, avoiding the break room banter. It wasn't just Sarah anymore. It was the entire culture of superficiality that seemed to permeate the office. It was exhausting to constantly parry these subtle attacks, to guard my secret, to live this double life. The pressure built, tightening around my chest like a vice. Sometimes I'd be in a meeting, and someone would mention EverFresh as the benchmark for quality, or as a shining example of a successful brand. My heart would pound, my hands would sweat. I'd nod along, pretending to be just another employee, while inside my mind screamed, "That's mine, that's my sweat, my tears, my sleepless night." Temptation to reveal the truth grew stronger with each passing day. Just imagine the look on Sarah's face. The stunned silence, the dawning realization, the satisfaction of finally putting her in her place. But then the fear would creep in. What would change? Would people treat me differently? Would I lose the quiet normalcy I had carefully built? Would the burden of wealth become even heavier if everyone knew? I thought of Lily. She was now a vibrant teenager, full of energy, pursuing her dreams, completely healthy, thanks to the treatments funded by my sacrifice. She knew about the patent, about the sale, about why I chose to live the way I did. She was proud of me. Her opinion was the only one that truly mattered. The sting of Sarah's words, the constant, ignorant judgments, kept gnawing at me. How much more could I take before I snapped? How long could I keep this earth-shattering secret hidden? The breaking point felt dangerously close. The breaking point arrived, not with a bang, but with the quiet, calculated cruelty of a casual remark. It was a Thursday afternoon, and our department was gathered for a quarterly review meeting. The atmosphere was usually tense, but today, Sarah seemed particularly animated, holding forth on the importance of brand loyalty in data analysis. "It's about perceived value, people," she announced, pacing in front of the whiteboard. "Why do consumers choose EverFresh over a generic container? It's not just the product, it's the trust, the reputation, the promise of quality. You don't get that from some no-name plastic box." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the room, and then, slowly, deliberately, they landed on me. I had, out of habit, brought my old unmarked container to the meeting, filled with a few grapes for a snack. It sat on the table beside my notebook, unassuming. "Right, Alex?" she said, a smirk playing on her lips. "You wouldn't know anything about that, I suppose. Always so practical, aren't you?" The implication hung in the air, too cheap to understand true value. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter went through the room. Mark shuffled his papers, avoiding eye contact. Even our usually stern manager, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat, sensing the shift in atmosphere. But Sarah was on a roll, basking in the spotlight. "I mean, it's fine for you, Alex," she continued, picking up my container, turning it over in her hands, as if inspecting a curious artifact. "But for real consumers, for people who care about their health and their investments, they choose EverFresh. They choose quality. They choose a name they can trust." She held it up, dismissively. "This," she said, practically sneering, "is just plastic." My blood ran cold, my hands clenched under the table. The plastic she held, the very plastic she mocked, was the culmination of my life's work. My fingers twitched, desperate to grab it from her, to reclaim what was mine, to make her understand. The word cheap echoed in my mind, amplified 1,000 times. I felt a surge of pure, unfiltered rage. It wasn't just about the insult anymore. It was about the dismissal of my struggle, my sacrifice, my entire identity. My vision blurred slightly. My chest felt tight, like a band of steel was constricting my lungs. "It's more than just plastic, Sarah," I managed to choke out, my voice strained, barely above a whisper. Everyone turned to look at me, surprised by my sudden intensity. She raised an eyebrow, a patronizing smile still on her face. "Oh, do tell, Alex. What profound secret does this generic little box hold?" She gestured around the room, inviting everyone to share in her amusement. In that moment, I could have done it. I could have revealed everything. The words were on the tip of my tongue, burning like acid. "It holds my patent, you ignorant fool. It holds the secret to your precious EverFresh." But then a different image flashed in my mind. Lily, small and frail in a hospital bed, her face pale, her breathing labored. The reason I sold it, the reason I let my name be erased. The memory hit me with the force of a tidal wave, washing over the anger, replacing it with a familiar, searing ache. The cost of her medicine, the fear in my parents' eyes. It was a choice I had made, a sacrifice I had willingly endured. To reveal it now, in a fit of pique, for a moment of fleeting satisfaction, felt cheap in itself. It would undermine everything I had done, everything I had been through. I closed my eyes for a split second, taking a deep, shuddering breath. The anger drained away, leaving behind a profound exhaustion, a hollow sadness. When I opened my eyes, the rage had been replaced by a weary resignation. "It just holds my lunch, Sarah," I said. My voice flat, devoid of emotion. I pushed back my chair, standing up. If you'll excuse me, I suddenly don't feel well. I walked out of the conference room, leaving a stunned silence in my wake. I could feel their eyes on my back, but I didn't care. I needed to escape. I needed to breathe. I needed to be alone. I retreated to the empty stairwell, collapsing onto a cold concrete step. My head throbbed. The insult, the memory of Lily, the crushing weight of my secret. It was all too much. I sat there, hunched over, silently wishing for the world to swallow me whole. The heartbreak was a physical presence, a weight on my soul. How much longer could I keep this immense secret locked inside? How much more could I bear before it truly broke me? I sat in the stairwell for what felt like an eternity, the cold concrete seeping into my bones. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Mark, my cubicle neighbor. I ignored it. I wasn't ready to face anyone, to explain anything. The emotional whiplash from rage to profound sadness had left me drained. Finally, after about 20 minutes, the door creaked open. I braced myself, expecting Mr. Henderson or even Sarah coming to check on me or perhaps to offer a condescending apology. But it was just Mark. He looked genuinely concerned, his face etched with worry. He sat down a few steps below me, respecting my space. "Alex, hey," he said softly. "You okay?" "Sarah, she went a bit far." I just shook my head, unable to form words. The shame of my outburst, combined with the underlying pain, kept me silent. "Look," Mark continued, "I know she can be a lot. She doesn't mean to be hurtful, I don't think. She just doesn't get it." "She doesn't," I finally said, my voice raspy. "She doesn't get anything." I looked at my hands, tracing the lines on my palm. That container, the one she was holding. Mark frowned. "Yeah? What about it?" My resolve to keep my secret had been severely shaken by Sarah's relentless comments. The fear of exposing myself was still there, but it was now overshadowed by the overwhelming need to simply be understood, to share the burden that had been crushing me. Mark was a good guy, quiet, observant, and he had always shown me a quiet respect that Sarah never did. Maybe, just maybe, he could understand. "Mark," I began, my voice barely a whisper, "that EverFresh container, the brand she keeps talking about." I took a deep breath, the words feeling foreign and heavy on my tongue. "I designed it." Mark's eyes widened. He blinked, clearly confused. "You designed it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean I invented it," I clarified, looking him straight in the eye. "The whole system. The unique seal, the material, the modular design. Everything. I developed it for years, got the patent for it. Patent number 8,765,432. It's my invention." Mark stared at me, his jaw slightly agape. He looked like he was trying to process information that simply didn't compute. "Wait, what? You are telling me you invented EverFresh? The multi-billion-dollar brand?" I nodded, slowly. "Yes, but I sold the patent years ago to Zenith Innovations. That's why my name isn't associated with the brand publicly. They bought it outright." Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I watched Mark's face as comprehension slowly dawned, followed by a flicker of disbelief, then shock. "But why? Why would you sell it? And why are you working here?" And so I told him. I told him about my childhood, about Lily's illness, about the astronomical medical bills that threatened to bankrupt my family and take my sister from us. I told him about the agonizing decision to sell my life's work, my dream, to save her. I explained how the money meant Lily could live, truly live, but how it also came with the quiet burden of immense wealth that I felt compelled to hide. To live simply, to remain grounded, and remember the true cost of everything. I didn't want the fame, I explained, my voice raw with emotion. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted to save Lily. And then, after that, I just wanted to live a normal life, a quiet life, where I wasn't defined by money or brands, where I was just Alex. I gestured vaguely. And then Sarah comes along, constantly judging me, calling me cheap for not buying the very brand that was born from my desperate need to save my sister's life. It ripped me apart. Mark listened intently, his expression shifting from shock to deep understanding, and finally to something akin to awe and profound sadness. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a long moment. He just reached out slowly and put a hand on my shoulder. "Alex," he said, his voice quiet, filled with genuine respect. That's an incredible story, a heartbreaking one." He squeezed my shoulder. "You are not cheap, man. You are a hero. You literally sold your dream to save your sister. That's selfless." His words, simple as they were a balm to my wounded soul. Someone finally understood. Someone finally saw past the cheap facade to the painful truth beneath. A huge weight lifted from my shoulders. A pressure I hadn't realized how heavy it was until it began to dissipate. "But Alex," Mark continued, his brow furrowed, "you can't just keep this to yourself. Sarah, she needs to know. You can't let her keep doing this to you." "I don't know," I admitted, suddenly feeling vulnerable again. "What would happen if everyone knew? I don't want things to change. They're already changing, Alex," Mark said, his gaze firm. "You are hurting, and you deserve to be seen for who you really are. Not just by Sarah, but by everyone. You deserve to be proud of what you did. It's not about revenge, it's about justice. For you. For Lily." His words resonated, a quiet but powerful call to action. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was finally time to reclaim my story. Mark's words resonated deeply. He was right. It wasn't about revenge, but about reclaiming my dignity. The decision to finally reveal my secret wasn't easy, but the relief I felt after confiding in Mark was immense. The next day at work was tense. Sarah was noticeably quiet, avoiding my gaze, probably feeling a little awkward after her performance yesterday. Mr. Henderson gave me a brief, concerned glance, but didn't say anything. I spent the morning grappling with how to reveal it. A dramatic announcement? A quiet whisper to Sarah. It had to be something impactful, something undeniable, but also true to who I was. Not a showman, but someone who simply needed to be heard. Then an idea struck me. It wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. During my lunch break, I walked into the break room. Sarah was there, meticulously packing away her lunch into her pristine EverFresh containers. Mark was there too, pretending to be absorbed in his phone, but I could tell he was watching me. An unspoken support. I walked over to the communal bulletin board, where HR had posted an old framed copy of the company's mission statement, surrounded by various awards and recognition plaques. It was usually ignored. I reached into my bag and pulled out a plain manila envelope. Inside was a carefully preserved official document. Not the original patent, which was safely locked away, but a certified copy I'd had made years ago. I pulled out a small magnet and with deliberate slowness placed the document onto the board. It was a copy of the first page of my patent, clearly showing the title, EverFresh Food Storage System, and directly beneath it, in bold, unambiguous font, Inventor, Alexander Miller. There was also the patent number, the date of issue, and the official seal of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. I didn't say a word. I just stood there for a moment, letting the silence fill the room, letting the words on the page sink in. Then, I turned and walked to the microwave to heat my lunch. My own lunch, packed in my old, perfectly functional, unmarked container. Sarah was the first to notice. Her eyes, drawn by the new addition to the bulletin board, landed on the document. Her head tilted in confusion. Then her eyes widened, a slow horror dawning on her face. She walked closer, her EverFresh container still clutched in her hand as if drawn by an invisible force. She read my name. She read the title. She read EverFresh. The color drained from her face. Her hand trembled, and the EverFresh container slipped from her grasp, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Her eyes darted from the document to me, then back to the document. A frantic, desperate search for a logical explanation, an escape from the truth that was staring her in the face. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a raw sound of disbelief. "No, this can't be." Mock, who had been watching the scene unfold, finally looked up from his phone, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. Other co-workers started to notice the commotion, their conversations dying down. They approached the bulletin board, curiosity on their faces, which quickly turned to shock as they read the document. "Alex, is this real?" someone whispered. I turned from the microwave, my lunch now warm in my hand. My heart was pounding, but it was a different kind of beat now. Not fear, but a strange mix of exhilaration and deep, resonant calm. The secret was out. "It is," I said, my voice steady and clear, carrying across the room. "I invented EverFresh. I sold the patent to Zenith Innovations years ago, for personal reasons." I looked directly at Sarah, her face ashen, her eyes wide with a mix of shock, humiliation, and a dawning understanding. "I live simply by choice, Sarah, not because I am cheap, but because I know the true value of things, and it has nothing to do with brand names." Sarah just stood there, motionless like a statue, her perfectly coiffed hair, her designer clothes, her expensive accessories. They all seemed to fade into insignificance against the stark reality of the document on the wall. The very symbol of her perceived superiority lay shattered at her feet, both literally and figuratively. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. Disbelief, astonishment, and then slowly a grudging respect. Some faces showed embarrassment, remembering their own past comments. Others looked at me with newfound understanding. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, not of sympathy for me, but of profound mortification. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The realization of how cruelly she had misjudged me, how deeply she had insulted me, and how completely ignorant she had been, was clearly overwhelming her. The heartbreak wasn't mine in that moment. It was hers, as her entire worldview of status and material worth crumbled around her. But for me, it was pure, unadulterated release. The aftermath of the revelation was a strange mix of quiet triumph and uncomfortable silence. Sarah fled the break room almost immediately after I spoke, a choked sob escaping her lips. She didn't come back to the office for the rest of the day. The atmosphere among the other co-workers was awkward. Some approached me cautiously, muttering apologies or expressions of awe. "I had no idea, Alex." "That's incredible, man. I am so sorry you know." Mark gave me a discreet thumbs up. Mr. Henderson called me into his office later that day. He didn't ask for details, just expressed his respect and offered his understanding. He assured me my job was secure if I chose to stay. Sarah returned to work the next day, but she was a different person. Gone was the loud, confident pronouncements about brands and status. She kept to herself, her eyes downcast, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially me. She ate her lunch at her desk in silence, and I noticed she was now using a simple, unbranded container, just like mine. The office culture had subtly shifted. The constant brand chatter died down. People seemed to appreciate quality and practicality a little more, and judgment a little less. For me, the immediate relief of having the truth out was immense. It felt like I could finally breathe. The weight of the secret, the burden of being misunderstood, had been lifted. I no longer flinched at casual remarks about budget-friendly choices. I no longer felt the need to justify my simple lifestyle. It was my choice, and now they knew why. But the heartbreaking element wasn't entirely gone. The wealth hadn't erased the painful memories of Lily's illness, or the bittersweet feeling of letting go of my invention. Every time I saw an EverFresh product, the pride was still tinged with a quiet ache for the company I never got to build myself. The dream I had to sell. Lily was doing wonderfully, truly thriving, and that was paramount. But sometimes I still thought about what could have been. I realized that, while telling the truth liberated me from their judgments, it didn't magically heal all the old wounds. My decision to live simply wasn't just about hiding my wealth. It was deeply ingrained in my values, forged in the fires of scarcity and sacrifice. It was a reminder of where I came from, and more importantly, why I did what I did. I wouldn't change it. My relationship with Sarah never recovered. She tried to apologize once, a stammering, tearful attempt in the hallway. "Alex, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I was awful." I just nodded, not unkindly but distantly. "It's okay, Sarah," I said, but it wasn't. Not really. The trust was broken. The respect was gone. We maintained a civil professional distance, but the easy camaraderie she had sought with others, the casual office banter, had evaporated for her. She had built her identity on superficiality, and when that was challenged, she crumbled. It was a hard lesson for her, and for me, a poignant reminder that people often project their own insecurities onto others. I stayed at the job for a while longer. It was a good place to be quiet, to observe, to continue my low-key life. I found a renewed sense of purpose, not just in my work, but in knowing that I was truly living authentically. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping kids with science projects, much like I had been helped by my library. I set up a small foundation in Lily's name, quietly funding medical research for rare diseases, turning my wealth into something truly impactful. Life was different, lighter. The invisible chains of my secret had fallen away. I was still Alex Miller, the guy who preferred practicality, the guy who lived simply. But now, when people saw my plain lunch container, they didn't see cheap. They saw quiet strength. They saw sacrifice. They saw the inventor of EverFresh. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly seen, truly understood, and truly at peace with the man I had become. The heartbreak was now a scar, a reminder of the battles fought, but no longer an open wound. I was finally free.